Bienvenidos al 23º Congreso Internacional de Innovación Tecnológica e Informática 2025, organizado por la Facultad de Tecnología e Informática de la Universidad Abierta Interamericana, su Centro de Altos Estudios CAETI y el Comité Asesor del Congreso, integrado por destacados profesionales del ámbito académico, gubernamental y empresarial, nacional e internacional. El presente Congreso ha sido declarado de interés por la Honorable Cámara de Senadores de la Nación, por la Honorable Cámara de Senadores de la Provincia de Santa Fe y por la Secretaría de Cultura de la Municipalidad de Rosario. Cuenta con auspicios de las embajadas de Brasil, Uruguay, Italia y la India. Contamos también con auspicios académicos de universidades nacionales e internacionales, Universidad Tecnológica Nacional a través de todas sus regionales, Universidad Nacional de La Plata, Facultad de Ingeniería, Universidad Nacional de Entre Ríos, Universidad de Ciencias Sociales y Empresariales, UCES, Universidad del SEMA, Universidad Nacional de Jujuy, Universidad de la Defensa Nacional, Facultad de Ingeniería del Ejército, Universidad Católica de Santiago del Estero, Universidad Nacional de Rosario, Universidad Católica de Rosario, Universidad de la Marina Mercante, Universidad Nacional de Avellaneda, Universidad Nacional del Litoral y Universidad de Cuenca del Plata y de la Ciudad de Buenos Aires. También contamos con auspicios de universidades internacionales: Montclair State University, Ohio State University, Michigan State University y University of California, todas de los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica. Universidad de Deusto, España. Universidad de Salerno y Universidad de Camerino de Italia. Universidad Autónoma del Caribe, Colombia. Universidad Autónoma Juan Misael Saracho, de Bolivia. Y Universidad Autónoma de Encarnación y San Ignacio de Loyola de Paraguay, Universidad Tecnológica de Tulancingo, México. También contamos con auspicios de cámaras del sector tecnológico y asociaciones profesionales y organizaciones no gubernamentales. Confedi, consejos de decano de la Facultad de Ingeniería. Copitec, Consejo Profesional de Ingeniería de Telecomunicaciones, Electrónica y Computación. Polo IT Buenos Aires, Polo IT Rosario, CPCI, Consejo Profesional de Ciencias Informáticas de la Ciudad de Buenos Aires, Metro, Red de Directores y Decanos de Carreras Informáticas de la Ciudad de Buenos Aires, Fundesco, LALSEI, CECI, Cámara de la Industria Argentina de Software, SADIO, Sociedad Argentina de Informática e Investigación Operativa, SICONRA, Cámara de Informática y Comunicaciones de Argentina, CIEI, Colegio de Ingenieros Especialistas de la provincia de Santa Fe. Así también tenemos auspicios y sponsors del sector empresario: Anthology, Santander, Huawei, Microsoft, IBM, Exo, Wine Power, Prince Consulting, GFAST, AR Computación, Lagamaster, Locativa, Firmia, Segurred, Revista Innovación, Ledesma, Radium Rock, IT 360, OZ Digital Consulting, Radio Mitre, Telefe y Diario La Capital de Rosario. A todos agradecemos sus auspicios y seguiremos mencionando al resto a lo largo del Congreso. Así también agradecemos entonces a todos aquellos que nos están acompañando en este momento en el lanzamiento de este Congreso. Por lo tanto, quiero, antes de comenzar con el acto oficial del inicio, hacerles unos comentarios que seguro serán de utilidad para ustedes. En primer lugar, que si necesitan traducción, podrán elegir el idioma en el icono de interpretación con la gráfica del mundo que encontrarán en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Como ustedes algunos ya conocen y otros no, la modalidad de los bloques es que cada expositor presenta su tema y al finalizar el mismo, el bloque en su conjunto, podrán responder preguntas. Para ello ustedes podrán escribirlas accediendo al icono de preguntas y respuestas. También, al finalizar cada bloque, se habilitará una encuesta, la cual pedimos que las completen, puesto que es nuestro interés saber vuestra opinión sobre el desarrollo del Congreso. Y otro tema que no va a resultar menor, nos van a poder seguir a través de X o Twitter, y en este caso con algunas ventajas, con numeral City y hashtag, @City, numeral City, y así participar por más de 8 millones de pesos en premios. En cada módulo realizaremos sorteos, para lo cual al inicio del módulo yo le estaré dando el hashtag correspondiente para que puedan participar. Por supuesto, se sortearán los premios entre todos aquellos que hayan participado en ese módulo. Habrá un ganador, el cual se pondrá en contacto nuestro grupo de Community Manager para acordar la entrega del premio correspondiente. Y ese ganador lo anunciaremos en el siguiente blog. Por otra parte, es importante saber también que más allá que, por ejemplo, en el bloque de robótica tenemos un sorteo de una notebook, al final del Congreso tendremos un premio especial. También una notebook Exo T38 donada por la empresa Exo, la cual, para que puedan participar, deben tener que tuitear en todos los bloques del Congreso. Y además, estar presentes al finalizar justamente el Congreso cuando se realiza el sorteo. Bueno, de esta manera entonces ya los invito a que comiencen a tuitear con @City, numeral City, y así ya estar participando por el sorteo final. Para dar comienzo entonces ahora al acto inaugural del 23º City 2025, contamos con la presencia del doctor Marcelo De Vincenzi, vicerrector de Gestión y Evaluación, decano de la Facultad de Tecnología e Informática y presidente del Congreso. También con la doctora Claudia Pons, directora del Centro de Altos Estudios e Investigaciones de la Facultad de Tecnología e Informática CAETI y directora técnica de este sitio. Magíster Nicolás Matáis, director de productos de Anthology, Estados Unidos. A todos agradecemos que nos acompañen y voy a invitar justamente a nuestro presidente, al doctor Marcelo De Vincenzi, a que realice la inauguración oficial. Doctor.
Gracias, Edelmar. Un placer realmente nuevamente estar con ustedes, el año 23 de este Congreso. Es un placer porque realmente en forma continuada hemos trabajado para estar actualizados con las tendencias tecnológicas. Y no podemos dejar de lado que esta revolución industrial que nace en el siglo XIX sigue creciendo y nos sigue poniendo, a ver, en vela sobre todo para pensar cuál va a ser nuestro futuro de sociedad, ¿no? La inteligencia artificial es también otra tecnología que realmente, como ha sucedido cuando aparecieron las computadoras, cuando aparecieron los automóviles, cuando fueron apareciendo distintas tecnologías, pero la verdad que esta revolución, esta situación en la cual totalmente nos afecta transversalmente en cada una de nuestras disciplinas, es una tecnología que tiene la capacidad de pensar. Nosotros desde el City nos hemos convertido en un espacio de reflexión de innovación tecnológica y como espacio para poder entender el fenómeno social del siglo XXI desde el punto de vista de la informática como eje transversal, ¿no? Pero hoy con una inteligencia artificial donde potenciada no solamente sobre la capacidad de tener redes neuronales que tienen la posibilidad de poder detectar patrones, configurarse en matrices multidimensionales para poder construir conocimiento y crear conocimiento, y también ahora con este agregado que ya cada vez es más frecuente, de poder tener agentes configurables para poder trabajar sobre temas particulares, han realmente puesto en cierta forma en conflicto la zona de confort de cada una de las upstream de nuestra sociedad. Hablamos de la educación, de la industria, hablamos de la salud, y bueno, de esto es lo que vamos a ver en este City, ¿no? Este es un programa integral que está enmarcado en un observatorio tecnológico de tendencias tecnológicas de la Universidad Interamericana, ¿no? Que tiene su revista científica, tiene ateneos, tiene eventos. De hecho, los que bueno, participan y que nos siguen han participado durante todo el año de todas estas actividades, que no termina acá, este es el plenario, sino que continúa permanentemente. Hemos, como decía, 23 ediciones donde siempre nuestro foco fue promover la integración del Estado, la empresa y la universidad como combinación productiva, realmente como fórmula específica para poder garantizar que el humanware, que nuestro capital humano, realmente sea capaz de comprender y entender realmente los desafíos que nos propone nuestra sociedad. Tenemos un excelente comité asesor de más de 45, de 45 representantes nacionales e internacionales de todo el mundo que nos acompañan y nos ayudan a poner un faro y un horizonte a los temas que vamos a tratar. Y esto, bueno, ha dado cuenta que desde el año 2003 más de 70.000 asistentes únicos particulares han participado intercambiando y siguiéndonos en todas estas actividades. Hemos llevado a cabo más de 460 demos y presentaciones y, bueno, moderadores que se han dado cita también en la actividad suma más de 200. 16 países participan: China, Estados Unidos, India, Francia, Italia, Brasil, Canadá, España, Polonia, Finlandia, Dinamarca, Venezuela, Colombia, México, Uruguay y Chile. Son algunos de los países que realmente participan actualmente, ¿no?, en esta actividad. Y en el año 2003 iniciamos tímidamente pensando en una integración estratégica del Estado, la empresa y la universidad. Y paso a paso, como dijimos, y todos los años siempre tuvimos un eje temático. Trazamos o focalizamos realmente en el humanware, en la construcción de recursos humanos. Hablamos de la web 2.0, la integración del hombre y la máquina, la era de la ubicuidad, la Internet de las cosas. En el año 2018 hablamos de la singularidad de la tecnología informática y el horizonte del autosuficiente. En el 2020 hablamos de reescribir el futuro en un modelo híbrido y analógico. Y el año pasado hablamos de derribar barreras con inteligencia artificial. Bueno, este año vamos a hablar de la integración natural de la inteligencia artificial en todos nuestros procesos. Hoy estamos en un proceso de maduración donde la inteligencia artificial es totalmente, como decíamos, transversal, donde tenemos inteligencias artificiales estrechas que lo tenemos en nuestros automóviles, lo tenemos en nuestros celulares, lo tenemos en nuestras cámaras fotográficas, que son inteligencia artificial focalizadas en algo particular. Siri, Alexa, todo eso son inteligencias artificiales estrechas. Pero después tenemos una inteligencia artificial mucho más creativa, que es la generativa, lo que hoy nosotros utilizamos con Cloud, que utilizamos con la empresa de Anthropics, o con OpenAI, con ChatGPT, o Meta. Bueno, hay un montón de empresas que hoy se están disputando el liderazgo, incluyendo China, la hegemonía con respecto a lo que es la inteligencia artificial. Por eso que lo que vamos a ver es ver cómo los avances que se producen en el aprendizaje automatizado en escenarios de la educación, de la atención comunitaria, de la arqueología y de la industria. Vamos a ver cómo la inteligencia artificial, combinando con el machine learning, el IoT y la ética, realmente puede darnos un mejor porvenir o un potenciado, una situación mucho mejor de integración e inclusión social en nuestra sociedad. Vamos a hablar de la integración en la IA en la vida cotidiana y vamos a tocar también realmente a partir de la mitad del evento, vamos a incorporar un concepto en profundidad que es la computación cuántica. Y de la computación cuántica, sobre todo desde el punto de vista de lo que es la ingeniería de software de la computación cuántica y cuál es el efecto que se genera en nuestra sociedad. Estamos reemplazando cada vez más los átomos, en los cuales somos biológicamente construidos, estamos diseñados con átomos, estamos combinándolos y compartiendo nuestra sociedad con bits and bytes. Y eso es lo que nosotros llamamos la era digital. Las políticas públicas no van a estar ajenas, vamos a ver cómo realmente cada vez tomamos más confianza en el trato de los datos y cómo nos animamos a compartir en la nube nuestra información, ¿no? Y participar en un mundo digital y ubicuo. Vamos a ver también desde el punto de vista del social software, cómo la conducta del usuario, ¿no? Cómo realmente podemos administrar en forma eficiente y efectiva la oferta de la información. Vamos a ver también la empresa desde el punto de vista del emprendedurismo, las oportunidades que se generan, tanto en el área de la salud, en el área empresarial, en el área del emprendedurismo en general. Vamos a tener, están citados realmente personas realmente que son protagonistas en todos estos desarrollos y que han realmente generado cambios realmente en las tecnologías tal como lo tenemos. Vamos a hablar de la robótica y la domótica, vamos a ver lo que es un gemelo digital, un clon que realmente no es físicamente ni biológicamente como nosotros, pero que realmente construye y trabaja conforme mis movimientos y mis pensamientos. Vamos a entender cómo realmente podemos optimizar a través del uso de la inteligencia artificial la identificación de imágenes, aplicados, por ejemplo, a drones o a cualquier tipo de arquitectura donde necesitamos tener una visión gráfica y una visión online y permanente. Y vamos a ver la inteligencia artificial en la arqueología. Imagínense la posibilidad de reconstruir ciudades que a lo mejor desaparecieron de miles de años, ¿no? Y cómo realmente poder hacerlo. Bueno, todo eso lo vamos a tener también en el Congreso. Vamos a hablar de arquitecturas innovadoras, vamos a ver cómo realmente el hardware que realmente está hoy deslumbrándonos, que parece que siempre llegamos al límite de lo que podemos hacer, pero siempre hay algo más, lo cual vamos a confirmarlo. Vamos a hablar desde el punto de vista también de la ingeniería de software cuántica y de la seguridad en informática. Y después, por supuesto, un montón de otros temas que tienen que ver con la computación cuántica y nuestra sociedad. Eh, ¿Qué más puedo contarles? Yo creo que en cierta forma esta jornada tiene como propósito, como le decía al principio, reflexionar sobre esta innovación tecnológica. Hoy ser analfabeto no solamente significa que no tengo competencias para leer y escribir, sino también para poder acceder a estas tecnologías. Y cada vez más estas tecnologías están dejando de lado y están generando un grado de analfabetismo que realmente no quisiéramos realmente sufrir porque es casi imposible realmente pensar nuestra sociedad en el presente o en el futuro sin realmente el trabajo de esta tecnología. No porque realmente uno lo desee, sino porque realmente fue la tendencia que estamos generando. Desde el punto de vista de la machine learning, como les decía, el Internet de las cosas, la inteligencia artificial, la computación cuántica, el metaverso, la realidad aumentada y la realidad virtual, nos estamos realmente generando y entramos en una revolución 5.0. Estamos en la puerta de entrada y ya realmente estamos hablando de un web 3.0 donde no vamos a solamente tener la posibilidad de acceder a inteligencia artificial y poder programar y chatear con tecnologías, sino la posibilidad de tener avatars que van a ser nuestras posibilidades. Es decir, vamos a poder decirle a través de Internet, quiero que me compres tal cosa a tal lado, conseguirme el mejor precio y una vez que lo hagas, ponémelo todo y déjame envasarme el link solamente para que yo, una vez que lo revise, ponga el OK. Eso es la web 3.0. Y la verdad que es algo que está y poco a poco nos estamos realmente lo estamos incorporando en nuestra vida. Así que, sin más, yo quisiera a través de un video compartir con ustedes un poco de las imágenes de lo que vamos a representar y los títulos de los eventos. Así que, Javier, te pido por favor si lo podemos reproducir. Bueno, como por haber visto, es una vasta y profundo tratamiento de esta tecnología informática, de lo que vamos a tener durante toda la jornada, desde ahora a las 10 de la mañana hasta las 20 horas. Eh, Nuestro propósito es seguir aportando el conocimiento y las ventajas de ser una sociedad más reflexiva y poder permitir que todo el mundo pueda apropiarse de esas oportunidades de la innovación tecnológica e informática. Queremos seguir siendo inspiradores al emprendedurismo y a la innovación tecnológica. Queremos contribuir a la formación del capital humano, al humanware, y comprender los procesos de la sociedad de enfoque interdisciplinario. Queremos convertirnos en los signos de interrogación en exclamación, es decir, que realmente es verdad que todos pensamos en salir de nuestra zona de confort, es algo traumático, pero la verdad también nos genera oportunidades. Por eso que eh, queremos reducir la brecha digital, queremos realmente que tomemos la tecnología como un camino para poder mejorar y trascender de una forma más activa y más democrática. Les pedimos que no dejen pasar este tren del progreso, siempre lo comento, un tren donde las oportunidades se dan. Este es un momento de emprender y mostrar y no resistir, sino realmente ver la mitad del vaso lleno. Y después no dejemos que la ignorancia nos gane la batalla, por lo cual nuestra participación es muy, pero muy importante en esta actividad. Así que espero que disfruten y capitalicen todas las reflexiones de innovación tecnológica e informática y por supuesto nos estaremos viendo durante todo el evento. Muchísimas gracias.
Bueno, muchas gracias, doctor. Vamos a darles ahora la palabra a la doctora Claudia Pons, directora técnica del CITI. Doctora, buenos días.
Buenos días,
Adelante.
buenos días a todos. Buenos días. Bueno, bienvenidos al Citi. Bueno, es un orgullo, un honor para mí estar participando una vez más en el Citi. Y bueno, a las palabras tan claras del doctor De Vincenzi, yo quisiera agregar un par de reflexiones sobre los temas que tienen protagonismo este año en el Citi. ¿Sí? Por un lado, como mencionó el doctor De Vincenzi, la computación cuántica y por otro lado, la inteligencia artificial. ¿Sí? Estas dos tecnologías que son en principio muy diferentes entre sí, pero al mismo tiempo convergentes. Y en principio, bueno, recordarles que este año, 2025, es el Año Mundial Internacional de la Ciencia y la Tecnología Cuántica. Sí, esto es porque se cumplen 100 años desde el inicio del desarrollo de la mecánica cuántica. La computación cuántica es un paradigma distinto al de la informática clásica, y lo interesante es que algunos problemas que son intratables, que son imposibles de resolver en la computación tradicional, pasan a ser tratables. Y por eso este tema de la computación cuántica genera tanta expectativa. También hemos visto que durante décadas la computación cuántica fue como una rareza de laboratorio y ahora se está empezando a ver en el mundo real. Esto también los gobiernos, las industrias lo están viendo, están invirtiendo fuertemente en tecnología cuántica, están reconociendo el potencial que tiene la computación cuántica en la resolución de estos problemas hasta ahora intratables. Y bueno, y este tema de celebrar este año mundialmente, el año de la cuántica, es también como una gran plataforma para debatir, impulsar el progreso y todo el potencial que tienen estas tecnologías cuánticas. Bueno, por un lado entonces la computación cuántica y por otro lado tenemos la gran protagonista, la inteligencia artificial generativa, esta inteligencia que ha sido capaz, entre otras cosas, de dominar nuestro lenguaje humano, especialmente, bueno, desde el año 2022, cuando aparece ChatGPT y otras inteligencias artificiales similares, capaces de dominar nuestro lenguaje, aparece esta idea, esta narrativa dominante de que la inteligencia artificial general estaba llegando. ¿Sí? General en el sentido de ser una inteligencia que está a nuestra altura, emula la inteligencia humana. Y también surgió este miedo de que a corto plazo esta inteligencia artificial reemplazaría gran parte de la fuerza laboral y se convertiría en una superinteligencia que cambiaría la civilización. ¿Bien? Tanto las visiones utópicas como las distópicas surgen de la misma idea, ¿no? Que la inteligencia artificial se mejoraría rápidamente y recursivamente, ¿sí? Se potenciaría a sí misma hasta dejar atrás a la humanidad. Sin embargo, en los últimos meses, los líderes de las grandes compañías como Meta, como Google, han expresado un mensaje mucho más realista sobre el futuro de la inteligencia artificial. Y esto es interesante. Este mensaje desafía estas visiones mágicas de la inteligencia artificial y nos basa en la realidad. Nos dice que la inteligencia artificial es una nueva y poderosa forma de computación que requerirá todavía mucho tiempo, disciplina y trabajo para poder aplicarse por completo. Y el punto es que su éxito requiere integración con otros sistemas, ¿sí? Pero principalmente requiere supervisión humana, ¿sí? Los humanos estamos en el centro y somos los que definimos el éxito de la aplicación concreta de la inteligencia artificial, ¿sí? En estos últimos tiempos nos hemos dado cuenta de que la inteligencia artificial debe integrarse con los sistemas de información corporativos, debe operar de acuerdo con estrictos estándares de seguridad, debe proporcionar una auditabilidad de cómo maneja los datos. Y entonces las afirmaciones más comunes sobre la inteligencia artificial necesitan ser repensadas. ¿Sí? La inteligencia artificial generativa logró la comprensión del lenguaje natural, lo cual nos sorprendió mucho y abrió muchas expectativas, pero su verdadero impacto emerge solo cuando se combina con las disciplinas de ingeniería que ya funcionan, ¿sí? Y tiene que estar guiada por responsabilidad y calidad. ¿Sí? Nos quedó claro en estos últimos tiempos, yo diría en el último año se fueron aclarando estas cuestiones, de que las implementaciones mágicas no lo son así. ¿Sí? Los resultados exitosos provienen de la experiencia, la disciplina y principalmente de la integración de esta nueva tecnología con los sistemas ingenieriles que conocemos bien y que ya estamos utilizando. Bien, entonces estamos en un momento en el que las expectativas respecto a la inteligencia artificial y también a la computación cuántica se están redefiniendo. Y la discusión se aleja de los mitos y las utopías que nos acosaron en los últimos tiempos hacia un trabajo real, práctico, para convertir estas tecnologías en valor. Bien, en esta dirección, nuestro Congreso City tiene un rol sustancial en la formación de capital intelectual que sea capaz de entender y afrontar estos desafíos y estas oportunidades. Bueno, les dejo estas reflexiones y les deseo una jornada muy productiva y que disfruten mucho del City. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, doctora. Con esta participación, entonces, estamos cerrando un poco lo que es el inicio oficial del Congreso, pero vamos a entrar en el primer bloque, el de apertura e innovación hacia una integración natural con inteligencia artificial. Para lo cual, como les había adelantado anteriormente, les voy a dar el hashtag necesario para que puedan participar por el sorteo que se genera en este bloque. @City numeral innovación. Y por esta participación podrán justamente ganar un monitor Lenovo de 22 pulgadas, una cámara web 720 de la empresa IT 360 y un servicio de hosting ilimitado por un año con dominio incluido. De esta manera, entonces, ya pueden comenzar a tuitear. Asimismo, les recuerdo en este caso, si necesitan traducción, que podrán encontrar, según la versión correspondiente del Zoom, el mundo en la parte de justamente inferior de la pantalla, o si no, un cuadradito con CC, que es exactamente lo mismo para que puedan ingresar en interpretación. También les recuerdo que las preguntas las podrán escribir accediendo al icono de preguntas y respuestas y serán respondidas al finalizar el bloque. De esta manera, entonces, vamos a comenzar ahora sí invitando a nuestro primer keynote speaker, Magíster Nicolás Matáis, y solicito al doctor Marcelo de Vicente, presidente del Congreso, a que realice la presentación pertinente y la moderación del bloque. Doctor.
Thank you, Edelmar. Hi, Nicolas. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. Nicolas, he's actually the CTO officer for Anthology, one of the biggest EdTech or the biggest EdTech company in the world. Welcome, Nicolas.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Marcelo. Really appreciate it. All right. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, actually, we would like to share. I mean, we have thousands of questions because I will do like a formal presentation, but you will share some thought about toward the responsible adoption of artificial intelligence in education. So if you want me, before you start, let me introduce you formally with the audience. Nicholas is Chief Product Officer. Nicholas leads the product strategy of Autology Holistic EdTech ecosystems. Nicholas has nearly 20 years of experience in EdTech, having worked in several institutions around the world. He has co-founded Frontier, developing Ally, a revolutionary tool that helps institutions to make their course materials more accessible for all learners. Following the acquisition from Frontier from Blackboard, Nicholas joined the organization as a product director of Ally before leading, that is what he's doing right now, leading the product management team for Ontology's learning management system. Nicholas is also a member of a board of directors of IMS Europe, UK All-Party Parliament Group for Assistive Technology, and UNESCO Global Education Coalition. He holds a degree in artificial intelligence and natural language processing from University of Cambridge. Impressive, Nicholas. So you're very young, but you didn't miss any time. You study a lot and you've been doing a lot of things. So we are very glad to hear you about your presentation.
No, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I'm not that young anymore. Maybe I can still get away with it, but I appreciate the compliment. All right, let me try to share my slides. So I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about how do we think about the responsible use of AI in education, and why is there so much conversation about AI in education specifically? And so where I wanted to start is that obviously artificial intelligence has been around for a very long time. It's been around for decades, but up until 2022, it hasn't had a real strong impact on education yet. And I wanted to start off by just talking a little bit about why that's the case, because if we look at our day-to-day life, AI has kind of had a real impact on that already, even before generative AI. And so if you look at a few examples like Netflix and Amazon, those have had real kind of impact from AI. I'll give you one example from kind of Netflix, where they have been using traditional AI techniques for a very long time. Things like Netflix will recommend movies and series to you based on what you've watched before. So they recommend things to you. There's some AI at work there. They also, behind the scenes, they group you with other people around the world that are similar to you. Based on that, they also make recommendations to you based on what other people similar to you, what they have viewed. They try to do predictions. They predict the future based on prior behavior, based on history. And so they do things like caching content before actually people start to request it. And even this one's probably the creepiest one, but they will give you different thumbnails depending on what you think you are most likely to click. So they try to kind of understand you and give you different things to kind of influence your behavior. And the reason why, so these are some examples of the types of techniques that are being used, but we haven't seen education kind of that happen in education as much. And the reason for that is, for these more traditional AI techniques to work really well, you need two different things. You need a large number of people that is interacting with a small number of things, and you need a lot of structure and a lot of metadata around that. And so when we look at this and kind of compare that to education, you can start to see the difference. So in this case, Amazon has 214 million users, Netflix 192 million, and Blackboard has about 35 million. So similar, a little bit smaller. But when you look at the things that they're interacting with, this changes very completely. Netflix only has about 14,000 titles. Amazon has about 12 million things that they sell. But within Blackboard, we see over 3 billion different content items, kind of pieces of educational material. And so this is the big difference. And within those 3 billion, there's not a lot of structure, there's not a lot of metadata, it's all natural language. And this is really why AI traditionally hasn't applied to education very much yet. But with generative AI coming onto the scene, generative AI is designed to work with natural language, designed to work with unstructured data. That changes completely. And education suddenly becomes front and center because generative AI large language models have been designed to work with what education has a lot of. And so what we've seen over the last several years is we've seen a lot of debate on how does AI actually influence education? What does it mean for education? And we see very kind of wide opinions there. We see a lot of concern about, is this going to replace faculty? Is this going to, are students going to cheat? We see a lot of hype as well. Things like, oh, this is great. This is automatically going to fully personalize the student's education. This is automatically going to grade all of my assignments and I won't have to do any more work. And my personal opinion that the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. The truth probably is that to me, AI is just a tool. It is a tool that we can use to help solve real problems. And so it's all going to be about finding this middle ground of opportunity where the tool of AI can be used in a responsible way to solve real problems. And so what you need to do if you want to use something in a responsible way is that you first of all have to understand what are some of the challenges that that technology or that tool has. And so a few of those, and I know many of you will be familiar with this, are things like there are potential challenges around data privacy and copyright. Where is the data coming from that the model was trained on? What happens to my data? There are challenges around bias. Any bias that exists within the training data will also come out in the use of that tool. There can be hallucinations. It can give you incorrect answers. It's not always very easy to kind of explain why a large language model gives you a specific answer. It can't always send you back to where it got that information from. And there is the potential for environmental impact as well. So it's important that we are aware of these challenges. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be using AI. I'm a huge believer. I think this has huge opportunity for education. It's just important that we take these limitations into account. And so that's why I think from an education perspective, it's really important that we, over the next several years, kind of find that middle ground, find where in education can we use this as a tool that solves real problems. And I think ultimately it's going to be about finding this top left quadrant, which is all about where can we use AI to solve real problems that have high impact, but also limit some of that risk as much as possible. So that is really going to be the key over the next several years. And one of the things that's important within that is in order to make sure that you end up in that top left quadrant, that you are doing things that have high impact and low risk, is that you have a good policy, a good framework on how you approach the use of AI. So we ourselves as Ontology, we also have a trustworthy AI framework. We would recommend that every university, every institution has their own kind of AI policies or AI framework. And so within ours, there's a whole number of guidelines that we try to follow, but some of the key ones include that we believe it's very important that you as educational institutions are always in control. You get to decide what to use and when to use. We also think it's very important that a human always needs to be in the loop. A human always needs to be in control. There always needs to be a way to kind of see what AI is doing, what it is suggesting, and for a human to ultimately be able to intervene if something goes wrong. We think that is really important for the responsible use of AI. And then the last one is that we also want to make sure that we're addressing kind of any copyright and data privacy concerns. Kind of your data should be yours and it shouldn't be used to kind of train large language models. And so following some of these guidelines becomes really important. Now, one other problem that I just wanted to talk about, or one challenge or one journey that we'll have to make that I wanted to talk about is around kind of instructional design and assessment. And many of you will probably be aware of Bloom's taxonomy. This kind of defines how kind of courses are designed, how assessment is designed. This has been around since the 50s. And this is essentially a pyramid that kind of goes all the way from lower order thinking skills to higher order thinking skills. And kind of the different levels that exist within that, it kind of starts with just remembering facts. Then it goes to kind of understanding things. Then it goes to how do you then start to apply that, what you've learned in similar situations. Then how do you start to analyze that what you've learned, how do you start to evaluate that, make judgments, draw conclusions from that, and then how do you apply that to actually start to create new things. So this has been around since the 50s. What's really interesting, though, is that generative AI poses a little bit of a challenge here because it's actually very good at most of these things itself. So that means that we have to start to adjust how we work as educational institutions to really evolve towards a kind of an AI world rather than continue to do what we are already doing. And so this kind of talks about that need over the next several years. We are going to have to do a lot of work to go from how we do instructional design, how we do assessment today, to kind of more of an AI-inspired Bloom's taxonomy that is a lot more skills-based and where AI is assumed and is just part of part of the expectation, part of our framework. And so I think this, I won't go into all of the detail here. I know I'm running out of time, but I think this is a really good way to start to think about how do we evolve things within education to really account for the use of AI. So rather than just remembering, actually, let's change that to making sure that students are really good at being able to source information, being able to look at information critically, rather than just understanding, kind of work with students to help them communicate ideas, explain ideas, rather than just allow them to kind of solve problems in unfamiliar scenarios, put them in new situations where they then have to apply, rather than just analyzing, kind of allow them to take AI generated outputs, kind of compare them, check them for accuracy, rather than just evaluating, actually allow them to really kind of reflect, really make judgments, kind of really formulate perspectives, rather than just creating, ask them to co-create with other students, but also co-create with AI, ask them to make AI part of their kind of their starting point, ask them to iterate, ask them to show the full kind of thinking process that they are going through. And then ultimately it's this top layer that I'm really excited about, is really this transformation layer, actually start to allow students within their education to do real things that drive real world change and ultimately social impact, because AI provides a set of tools that can get them there a lot sooner. And so the question is, so over the next several years, we're going to be really focused on developing these kind of more authentic assessments, making AI part of what we do. There's a lot to still explore here. And Marcelo, if I can take maybe one more minute, I just wanted to share a very quick case study. This is something that we've done. It's something called the Blackboard AI conversation. And I think it's just an example of how we can start to work AI into the educational curriculum. And so what the AI conversation is, it's essentially a new tool that lives within Blackboard, and it allows the instructor to define an AI persona, which could be a historical figure, it could be an expert, it could be a fictitious character. And then the instructor can define a scenario or a case study that the student then has to work through, play through with that AI persona, and then they reflect on that at the end. So this is something that was impossible before, but now with the onset of generative AI, very possible, very pedagogically sound. And so if we look at our framework here, this is something that actually starts to move towards this kind of apply layer, because they can now play out knowledge in different scenarios. They can kind of analyze what's coming back. They can actually make judgments, refine their perspectives. So this is, I think, a good early example of how this new way of looking at assessment and instructional design starts to show up in the learning environment. Just to give you kind of a few examples of how that's been used, we've seen this being used with teacher training, for example, where they have to work with AI personas of children to kind of play them through different scenarios. We've seen it be used with kind of fictitious characters. This is something around data ethics, and it's all about kind of thinking very critically about kind of what it means for companies to be using data. This was another example from a nursing class where they were actually asked to kind of do role-playing scenarios with different types of patients, put them at ease, etc. So creating that unique opportunity to really put students into new scenarios, ask them to reflect, ask them to kind of apply their knowledge in ways that we weren't really able to do before. So in this particular example, we've seen about kind of 1 million different uses of this in the last In the last year, we've seen some really positive feedback from students. Students really kind of appreciate this more interactive, more authentic way of engaging with the materials, understanding, internalizing the materials. So wanted to share that as one example, but I think my big takeaway is that I think as an education industry, AI has a real impact. It's very relevant for education. And the key over the next several years is really going to be to evolve how education works, evolve our instructional design, evolve our assessment, make it more authentic, and ultimately, I think, deliver a better experience for students. So I'll pause there, and I would love to open it up for questions.
Thank you, Nicolas. I can say that I agree completely with what you said. I think the AI implementation in education upstream, it opens a lot of opportunities, but also some risk. I mean, we like to hear a little bit from you how is to lead a group of programmers to work on developed AI on Blackboard and the ontology products, where the concern is about how you do in order to that they get criteria that they should guide the responsible implementation of AI technology, ensure the inclusivity across the diverse of student population, and they don't go like on a bias or I mean, because everybody has their own beliefs, and actually they can actually lead the AI to respond to some certain things instead of be more open. So how do you work that in your team?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think, I mean, when we look at kind of our team, my team, there's kind of two different types of usage of AI. There is the kind of the usage of AI behind the scenes. How do we use it as part of our software development process? And it's actually, I can share that AI is being used constantly now as part of our software development, and so making sure. But this again comes back to use it in the right ways and make sure that there's always a human in the loop. So we still have very strict kind of code review policies, etc. But you can start to speed up some of the development work. Now, the second part of using AI is obviously what do we start to do with it in the product? How do we make it available to users, to students, to instructors? We obviously kind of work very closely with the instructors, with students, get their feedback as part of this. I wanted to pick up though on kind of what you said about the kind of inclusivity across different student populations. I think that one's really important because AI is kind of a double-edged sword when it comes to inclusivity. It can go both directions. I actually think it has a lot of opportunity to improve inclusion, improve inclusivity, because it can really be a tool that can help drive more personalization. It can adjust to students' preferences, to their needs. I think what we just saw with the AI conversation, I think, is a really good example of creating more personal experiences for students. It can also help kind of automate things more easily, kind of make things more accessible automatically. So there's a lot that we can do now that wasn't really possible before. So from an inclusivity perspective, it has a lot of possibilities. There's also a downside to AI, which is that it's around equity and access to AI tools. And so AI tools can be very expensive, as probably most of you know. If you want to license an AI tool for an entire university, for example, that could be quite expensive. And so there's a risk here about equity, kind of equity risk here in terms of what if some institutions can pay for some of these tools, some institutions can't, or some students can pay for the best tools, but other students cannot. And so there's a risk there of are all students going to get access to kind of the best tools there so they can be ready for the workforce? So that is an area where I think institutions have a really important role to play, make sure that these tools are made available to students in equitable ways so that they can be ready to use them in the workforce as well. So cuts a little bit both ways, lots of opportunity, but we need to make sure that we're aware of the risk as well.
Yeah, well, we talk about one side of a coin. So from the developer on the production of the contents with AI, but if we are as a consumer, what level of importance you'll assign to the construction of the prompt engineering of a process of AI communication? I mean, some university, they said that is the, is the degree of the future. Construct the prompting. And what do you recommend to share the base on experience as a developer?
It's a really good question, and it's actually one where I don't know where we will end up in the future. I think there's a lot of possibilities here. It's a bit of a question mark to me. What's interesting is that when generative AI came into the world, when it came onto the scenes, it was obviously ChatGPT got there first. And ChatGPT has a conversational interface where you enter natural language and you get a response back. And I always thought that was really interesting because it's that conversational UI is interesting in that it's very easy to get started with, but it's extremely difficult to use it well. So it's easy to get started, but it's got a very high bar to use it well. And so what I think we're starting to see in the world is that a lot of cases where AI can be used is starting to move towards kind of specialized workflows where the AI is being used behind the scenes, but people aren't being asked to kind of write the full prompt. And we've got an example of this. We've got lots of examples of this in Blackboard as well, where we have a tool, for example, that helps instructors define a grading rubric for an assignment. We're not asking them to write that full prompt on how to get a good rubric. We help them with that. They just have to provide the assignment, etc. So they don't have to know how to prompt to get a good rubric there. And so I think that's an interesting scenario. And so I think we'll see more and more of that, where the use of AI will move away from conversational UIs into kind of more dedicated workflows, where the AI is really more used behind the scenes. So that has the potential to reduce the need for prompting a little bit. At the same time, prompting provides so much power that it could be a really important skill of the future. It's just hard to tell how it's going to play out. Is it going to be like what we have today, where most people know how to do a Google search? That is a really good skill to have. Only some people know how to code, and that's useful in certain fields, but not always necessary. It could be the same for prompt engineering, where it could be something where people knowing how to do basic prompts is a good skill for everyone to have. More advanced prompts may be something that's kind of more specific to kind of specific fields. But I don't really know how this will play out. It'll be really interesting to see if we go more towards kind of all in on prompting, or whether we go more towards kind of specialized workflows where AI is more in the background.
Great. Actually, in the school and university, the good questions means that you know about the topic. So it's
exactly
also to evaluate the students and the teachers. So, but if we focus more into the bias and equity, okay? So all the models are trained to existing data, which often contains historical and cultural biases, because we are humans and actually we have our criteria. So what concrete and practice strategy you suggest to audit and mitigate this bias in educational context, ensuring the AI promote equity, and it doesn't perpetuate or even amplify the inequities? I mean, it's something that is, as a human, is almost impossible to do it, because we are designed to do those things, to challenge ourselves and our surrounded. But how do you work with that? I mean, especially with a team, you know what I mean? Because you can do it yourself, but how do you work with a team to think that the product that you produce is not that biased and it promote the equity?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of thoughts there. So I mean, first of all, it's interesting that humans themselves are also biased. So this isn't an entirely new problem, but it's obviously for AI, it is a real concern. And so one of the things that I think is really important is that concept of always having a human in the middle, always having a human in the loop, being very transparent when AI is being used. And so, for example, within our products, every time that AI is being used, we are very transparent to the end user, saying that this uses AI behind the scenes, therefore it could be incorrect or it could be biased. So please go ahead and validate this. Please make sure that this is correct. So putting humans in control of kind of giving them some ownership is really, I think is really important. It's going to be really interesting to see how that evolves as things like AI agents, for example, become more mainstream. AI agents are more of a black box. It kind of happens behind the scenes. So it'll be really interesting to see how that evolves. But I would ultimately make sure, first of all, kind of choose the tools and the technologies and the vendors that you use, choose them very carefully, ask them about what models are you using, how do you provide transparency, what is it trained on? And I think the other thing that's really important is that, and this is, for example, something that we do within the learning management system as well, is that you can also ground large language models in kind of content in specific contexts. So for example, when we make suggestions to an instructor in a course, those suggestions will actually be based on the content that that instructor has already provided. And I think that's a really good way to start to weed out some of the bias, because it's already based on kind of a ground truth, and it's already based on the context in which that work's happening. But it's a real risk. We have to keep an eye on it. And ultimately, I do think humans have to take responsibility for the final output.
Yeah, actually, Nicolas, and yesterday we've been in the Senate of Argentina, and we have been doing a presentation because they're starting to think that we need some regulations to administrate the AI in critical process. So one of the idea that it come out for us, for the group, is to develop a vectorial database in order to accommodate the bias. I mean,
Yep.
You cannot accommodate everything, but by having control for a vectorial database, you might also help the AI to think a little bit about more open and not only in a mathematical way as it is. I mean, like a matrix that is an array of operations that actually they look for similarities, and if you found more similarities, it's true. If it's not, it's not true. So probably that would be that. But to close, we are almost closing to that because we have lots and lots of questions. But about the assessment and skills, with AI, we are capable to generate essays, solving problems, create code, traditional methods of assessment, and becomes obsolete. I mean, the way we learn, the way I learn, probably you too, is obsolete. So from your perspective, how should the assessment be involved to measure genuine learning and critical skill development rather than the ability to use a tool? I mean, some of questions that arrived to my panel says you should forbid the use of AI in education, or you should encourage that.
Yes. So this is actually a topic that I'm really excited about, because I think if we can do this in the right way, I think the future is really bright. But you're absolutely correct. And as I said before, the biggest challenge that higher education probably has over the next several years is evolving the teaching methods, evolving the assessment practices to make sure that they're appropriate for an AI age. That is exciting because it's something we've been wanting to do for decades now. The ability, like assessment haven't evolved much. We've been wanting to move towards more authentic assessment for quite a long time. And so we're going to have to work towards that. Hopefully kind of what I presented in that model starts to lay out a few ideas on how can we evolve what we're currently doing to be more appropriate in an AI world. But what I am kind of seeing around the world is that it feels like we are starting to move towards a approach towards assessment that is really consists of two different streams. I'm seeing sort of one stream where it will be expected to use AI. Students will be asked to create with it, do more authentic assessment, be able to show their process, show their full work, etc. And so that's that move towards more authentic assessment, and that's going to be one stream. The second stream that I'm seeing is that there may be certain assessments where AI is indeed not allowed to be used. And what I'm actually seeing is, and that's kind of really to make sure that they've got the basic skills. And I am also seeing that for some of those assessments, I'm seeing a move towards institutions actually doing more pen and paper assessments, more in-person assessments, more oral assessments, more group assessments. I've actually seen a lot of online schools that have very recently opened up in-person test centers. And so that's where I think we'll go, where this kind of, we will start to see a combination of some assessments are without AI, they're in person or they're in a controlled environment. Other assessments are much more holistic and are expected to be using AI. And I think where I get the most excited is that I think that the shift that we will see is that with content creation is essentially becoming a commodity because of generative AI. So I think that means that instructors, faculty are going to be spending less time creating content. And that allows us to shift the focus towards more coaching for students, more mentoring, providing them with better feedback. And I think that's ultimately kind of the most exciting transformation ahead of us if we can do this successfully. Because if you can do that, then I think you're making education richer. And I think students in 10 years from now will say that they are getting more value from their education then than they do today. So that is my hope for the future. But it does require us to make that shift towards kind of other types of teaching and other types of assessment. That's going to be a hard change, but once we've made a change, I do think it'll be a better place to be.
I can agree more. I mean, I believe that it's going to be very, very challenged, but I think the education, the process of education, the process to learn, but not only in the university, I mean, in all type of activities that we will be doing in our society, it will change and it will change forever. Thank you for sharing your generosity to share your thought. Thank you to share the enthusiasm. I mean, I would like to start another degree. I mean, I would love. It's going to be very fun. I mean, it's going to be a challenge for the teacher, for students, and everybody. But I think it's something different. So thank you very much. I know that you will come in on November. So you will be visiting Buenos Aires on November. So we will be very glad to have you here and also to continue sharing some thoughts regarding the EdTech and all the technology that's coming to us.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, thank you.
Bueno,
ya
tomamos, doctor, entonces.
¿Qué le parece, Elmar? ¿Cómo venimos?
Excelente, excelente, excelente la participación, con muchos mensajes realmente maravillosos que estamos contestando desde la facultad, y realmente excelente el nivel y obviamente, ¿no?, la coincidencia con lo que acaba de plantearnos Nicolás, y el trabajo que ustedes están haciendo en Paraguay.
Claro, y ahora vamos a hablar de acá de directo de Londres, volvemos acá y volvemos a hablar acerca de emprendedurismo, ¿no? Y vamos a hablar
We are going to talk about entrepreneurs.
Así es, exactamente. So, Nicholas, if you want to continue following us, you can actually connect directly with the interpretation on the world icon, and you can follow us because we wouldn't do it in English. In Spanish, so you can follow up in English. Así que, Edelmar, ya tenemos todo conectado como para poder dar continuidad al próximo bloque.
Así es, doctor, así es. Entonces, nuevamente agradecemos a quienes han participado y, por supuesto, vamos a pedir la encuesta para que nos diga también el público qué le ha parecido al respecto. Y mientras esto ocurre, yo voy a seguir agradeciendo en este caso a universidades nacionales por su auspicio: Universidad Nacional de Quilmes, Universidad del Siglo XXI, Universidad de Massa, Universidad Nacional de Río Negro, Universidad Católica de Santa Fe, Universidad San Pablo de Tucumán, Universidad Nacional del Nordeste, Nacional de Lomas de Zamora, Universidad de Mendoza, Blas Pascal, Católica de Córdoba, Universidad Privada del Norte, Universidad del Museo Social Argentino, Universidad Atlántida Argentina, Universidad del Salvador, Universidad del Cine, Universidad del Centro Educativo Latinoamericano, Universidad Nacional del Noroeste de la Provincia de Buenos Aires, Instituto River Plate, Instituto Universitario para el desarrollo productivo y tecnológico empresarial de la Argentina. Así también a cámaras del sector tecnológico y asociaciones profesionales y organizaciones no gubernamentales que nos acompañan en este congreso. A COFI, Asociación Colombiana de Facultades de Ingeniería, LIFIA, Laboratorio de Investigación y Formación en Informática Avanzada, Universidad Nacional de La Plata, LIDI, Instituto de Investigación de Informática de la Universidad de La Plata, LINDI, Laboratorio de Investigación de Nuevas Tecnologías Informáticas, también de la Universidad de La Plata, ASEA, Asociación de Emprendedores de Argentina, Starbreed, Capítulo Argentino, Cátedra Abierta Latinoamericana Matilda y las Mujeres en Ingeniería, Fundación Libertad de Rosario y Rotary Club de Montserrat Rosario. También tenemos auspicios del sector empresario: Zoom, Amazon, Ricoh, Benetton, Full Control, Lenovo, Genome It, Soygen, Epson y TVNet. A todas ellas nuevamente les agradecemos por su auspicio y su